Welcome to this episode of Altitude. This show is all about you and what you can learn from others that are in the professions of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Today we have a great lineup. We have great persons here on the show. We have an electrical engineer student from St. Cloud, one of Minnesota State colleges and universities. We have an enterprise network account manager from Comcast Business. And we have the black tech guy, and you know that's going to be 3 great interviews today. So we hope that you enjoyed today's show, and we hope that you continue to watch Altitude in the future, and please press like and subscribe. With me today is Chikio Richmond. How are you doing, Chikio?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Wonderful. Good to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So I know we have a lot to talk about in such a short period of time, but our basic concept here is to understand how you, as a technologist and entrepreneur and business person and working in corporate America, to share your information with our students. And so the high school students and the adults that'll be re-entering into the work world will get a chance to see you and hear from you. And we thank you for taking the time out of your super busy schedule to be with us.
Well, you are very welcome.
So, let's see. Let's start with what do you do? Share a little bit about yourself. What do you do today?
Yeah, so today, for my day job, I work for Comcast Business. I am an enterprise account executive. That is a fancy way of saying that I consult and service mid to large size enterprise clients on their network infrastructure, providing connectivity, security appliances, routers, switches, anything that transports data.
So that's pretty nerdy, if you don't mind me saying that. Not to embarrass you or anything, but you're pretty techie. That's good. So that's what you do. Do you have any other businesses or any other ventures?
I do. So my personal venture, I am a business owner. I own a sober housing business called Betty's Healing Homes, where we house women who are going through intensive outpatient programming.
Okay.
We just opened our second house June 3rd.
That's incredible.
Yes, and now are up to servicing 16 women here in the Twin Cities.
Wow, so you give through corporate America, you give through the community. That's fantastic. So here you are today, sitting in the studios of Altitude. How did you ever envision yourself being here at this space and this time in terms of where you're at with your career and giving back to the community? Maybe you can share a little bit about your education and that pathway.
Okay. So to answer the first part of that, no, I didn't. And so my path into technology was a little bit different. It wasn't your traditional story where I graduated high school. I did go to college, but at that time did not know what direction I wanted to go. I actually became pregnant after my freshman year in college, and so here I was with a child and taking care of a family, and actually entered into technology through a communications company in their small business sector when I was about 22, 23 years old. And so at that time, to work in telecommunications meant that you still were getting a baseline education about technology. And so doing that for a while, really just trying to make ends meet, I fell in love with technology and decided that this is what I want to do. This is the field that I want to be in, and moved into pursuing my Cisco certification. So I'm actually certified in network routing and switching, and I'm still in school today studying cybersecurity, virtualization, and forensics. So I still haven't grown up all the way. I'm still learning. And that's because technology is ever changing, and that's the beauty of it, is that there's so many different facets of IT that you could be in school for 15 years and still there's things that you don't know about it.
Sure. And all the certifications that you listed, that's wonderful, because I think I connected through your schooling with Minnesota State and some of the recent classes that you took. So. That's actually pretty incredible, the certifications, and then moving in. Now you're an enterprise account manager. All right. So that's the education path, if you will. And are there any next steps for you in terms of your career, taking your education and where you're at today?
Yes, absolutely. So the next step for me in my daytime career, I am, like I said, pursuing a certificate in cybersecurity virtualization forensics. I want to veer more into security, so looking at getting another Cisco certification in security, like the next level up, which would be a CCNP, and then moving on to potentially a CCIE. I'm career pathing into engineering, so I would like to be a network engineer and possibly look at being a security architect.
Fantastic. That's beautiful. I know that the students and everybody are like, what were all the acronyms? So we'll probably have to cue the producer to put up all the names of what all those things mean. So I might need to, you need to write those down before you go so we can share those. But
I'd be
the
happy
CC
to.
is a Cisco certified, so I got that part of it. We'll go on and move on past that. So now you have this great education, all these certifications. You've got a great career. You've started a business, which we'll go into. We'll dabble a little bit into that later. But from lifestyle, so we always want the students to know that after you work hard, you play hard, you go to school, and you obviously being in cybersecurity and anything into forensics is a very nice salary, a nice income that you can design for yourself, and that's a great vision. I applaud you for that. But now that you can have all this money and have all this money, what do you do for lifestyle? What do you do for fun? I mean, what makes you tick?
Oh, wow.
What do you like to do?
Well, what makes me tick? So in my personal time, I like to work out. I'm actually a two-time champ. I'm a strongman competitor.
What?
Yes, the USS Strongman Federation. So I lift a lot of heavy weights.
Yep.
It's what keeps me grounded. It's what helps me mentally so that I can be prepared to do all these other things that I do. And of course, spending time with my loved ones, giving back to them is definitely like top of my list.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you said two-time strongman competition.
Yes, two-time champ.
All right. So you're a busy person. You've had the previous 2 years, I think you had indicated that with all the things going on, you have many choices. What current path are you on, and what are you investing now your personal time besides strength in yourself? What other things are you investing in going forward?
Sure. So things that I'm investing in, I'm very much so invested in the community. So with my sober housing business, some of the things that I like to incorporate for the ladies, we have like a community night. I'm looking at reaching out to local leaders and local experts in different industries to come in and speak to the ladies and provide them with some resources, be it like financial education, be it health and wellness, and those different things. I'm also looking to partner with people to give back to our youth. So looking at programming where we can reach out to youth and be able to mentor them, educate them, and let them know that there are people that look like them, specifically young girls of color. So I think that's where you and I probably met a little bit too there, just trying to understand how we can give back to the community, especially young girls, people of color. So
yeah. And I know recently we started an initiative with maybe about a dozen young women, practitioners that are technology and engineering and a range of STEM different disciplines to help a particular group of young ladies to get into maybe more of a recognition track or through the NC WIT aspirations. And we can post those pictures as we edit the show. But is there anything else, any particular piece of advice that you would give a young woman or young man, and just a young person in general? What would you tell them if they, had kind of an inkling for getting into network? Like, what created that inspiration in you to pursue that, and then how would you frame that for the young person?
The way that I would frame that for a young person today, the best advice I can give them is to believe in yourself and believe in what you do. Sometimes I think that we have these ideas or we have these inklings, and because maybe everyone around us isn't doing that thing, or when we explain to people what that thing is that we're interested in, maybe sometimes we're ridiculed for it. Don't give up. Don't give up. Keep telling your story. Keep talking to people. Do your research, and you will find like-minded people, or you will find people that will build you up and will help you out. And stay true to your passion, right? Stay true to your passion. If that's what ignites you, if that's what excites you, keep going, no matter how hard that it gets.
Absolutely, that grit and perseverance to
Right.
lead to success. Fantastic. Well, we thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for taking your time out, and We hope to keep tabs with you, and maybe you can bring some of your colleagues back through the Aspirations Initiative and share that this fall.
I would love to. Thank you for having me.
Welcome back. And with me, I have Tariq. Tariq, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good, Dr. Wolf. How are you?
I'm wonderful. So welcome, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know that you're summer intern, you're a college student, and you're like probably the most gifted engineering type person that I know, truly in school, out of school, and all this stuff, because the knowledge that you've imparted on me, I still am trying to catch up to.
Thank you.
So I'm not going to test you today. So this will not be a test.
Okay.
But we are going to talk about your schooling. We're going to talk a little bit about your lifestyle, what you do in and out of school, and then, you know, a little bit about the job and your career and what you want to do, your aspirations, as you said it. I like that word. So you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do in school. What are you going to school for?
Okay, well, I'm Tariq Abdul-Quddos. I currently go to St. Cloud State. I'm about to be going to my 4th year electrical engineering major, and you know, born and raised in the Twin Cities. You know, Minneapolis is home. But you know, as far as school goes, you know, engineering is something that I found it gave me that childhood feeling in terms of like the fun within it, and so that's why I specifically chose that field.
Okay.
And I also want to go into education, and so I can do both of those at the same time. That's my career aspiration. I know you're going to ask about that later, so
Let it
just
flow.
to
You're
throw that out
You're
there, you know, I want to put those two together and actually become a professor of engineering someday. But that's way down the line.
And that's a beautiful goal. That truly is, because we need more African American men and men of color in the classrooms. Not to disparage the women or the females, but there is a overwhelmingly huge cavern and a gap of male teachers, and specifically teachers of color. So that is great. And I know you're not interviewing me, but I applaud you for that beyond everything. And so hopefully some of the students that are out there will also pursue education with their technology or with their artistic or whatever pursuit that they may have. So you go into school, you have these big dreams, very attainable dreams. You're very smart. You have electrical engineering degree pursuit. So what do you do outside of school? What are you doing in the community? What types of things do you like to do?
Well, as far as the campus life goes, I'm part of our Black Student Union at St. Cloud, which is called CAS, or the Council of African American Students. I recently became the president of that, and then I'm also a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, Go Mob. And then on top of that, I'm part of a community organization called the African American Male Forum in St. Cloud. And so I enjoy taking part in these various social activities. You know, with the engineering, it's so technical that you have so much interaction with computers, you don't really get to focus on the social aspect of things. And so I am involved in so many of these things because of that.
And that's wonderful, because there is a stigmatism to engineers and computer science people, is that they aren't very social. But obviously, knowing you, I know that, and you're in college, so I won't disparage any college students. I know how fun it can be. But you take what you do pretty seriously, and you network, and you're working with other students, you're building coalitions. And that's the best part, because when you get into the professional work world, you're going to have to do those types of things. And some of the most valuable aspects of what you're doing now are going to lead to great opportunities later, because they're going to want somebody that can work in teams. They're going to want somebody that's smart, that can think on their feet, and very friendly, obviously.
Right.
Very likable also makes a very attractive candidate. So shameless plug, anybody looking to hire any future electrical engineers, we have one right here ready to go. So as you've dealt with the Black student unions and the other organizations, you also have networked with different companies, and you indicated that you have an internship. So can you share a little bit about maybe how you got that internship and what you do in that internship?
Okay, so one of my professors sent out emails to the class saying that a previous St. Cloud State student was looking for an intern. He works for a company that makes medical devices, specifically working with embedded systems. And embedded systems is the route that I've recently chosen to go with as far as electrical engineering goes. And I applied for that, and they called me up, and I went down to the interview, and a few weeks later, they said, "You got it." So I had a grin on my face for about a week after that.
You're still grinning, so that's good. That's a good thing. And to pursue your passion and actually have someone offer you a job in something that you know and you're good at makes it also so much more rewarding, right? So we've talked a little bit about your career and your education. So we did dabble in on lifestyle, but outside of school and outside of the networking with the Black student unions and other Phi Beta Sigma and the other organizations, what do you like to do in terms of lifestyle and for fun? I mean, what is it that makes you tick?
All right. So, well, when it's warm in Minnesota, it's a rare occurrence, but I try to go running. So I say I hibernate for about 9 months out of the year, and for the 3 that's warm, I try to go for runs. I typically do what other college students do, hang out, a lot of 2K. For those who don't know what 2K is, basketball on Xbox.
Yeah. I didn't know it, obviously. Go ahead.
Recently got into playing a little FIFA, so typically what other college students like to do. I like to read here and there. That pretty much sums up. Playing basketball in general, just going to the court, and I used to play basketball back in high school, so when I get that rare chance at college, I like to go and spend a few hours at the court.
Yeah, well, you've got a complete balance, right? You have the knowledge, you have the physicality, and you have the compassion and the outreach for community. And we're also looking forward to you giving back. I understand too that after school ends, or maybe this fall, you're going to partner up with Minnesota STEM Partnership and maybe help them shape and deliver this data architecture initiative. And I know there's a meeting coming up in a few weeks, but we'll talk about that maybe at the next show, or maybe when that launches in the fall. So now that we've covered pretty much the full spectrum, for the high school student that's maybe in 10th or 11th grade, and they've heard everything that you've had to say, what kind of advice would you give them to say, hey, I want to pursue this. I want to go to Minnesota State School. I want to go to St. Cloud in particular. What advice would you give them in terms of getting to where you're at?
just have fun with it. I mean, you can't really try to pursue something unless it's something that you're truly interested in and something that you actually feel like you're gonna enjoy in life. Especially within like the field of engineering, you know, it's a lot of people when they're first introduced to it, they feel like it's just so intense on math and so intense on the physics. And then you kind of just lose the fun out of that. So especially at such a young age, try to find where you're having fun at. My first introduction to engineering was my senior year of high school, and it was programming these boards called Arduinos, and I had so much fun with that, it just carried me on into my college years.
Wow. We're going to have you bring those Arduinos back into the classroom again for us. So, Tariq, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. It's wonderful having a young person on the show, and we look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of Altitude.
Thank you.
Take care. I have Mondo Davison. How are you doing, sir?
Man, I'm doing good. I just had some good food, so I'm feeling great and refreshed.
Yeah, the weather's great.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. So, the Black Tech Guy, you are in the studio. This is awesome, blessing us with your presence on Altitude. Mondo, I have the pleasure of knowing you for a very short period of time, but long enough to know that your family and all of your relatives that I've met have this very distinct vertical in STEM and STEAM, and actually, right? Because I've had a chance to work with younger nephews and everybody. So tell me a little bit about how you got to be. I'm going to ask you later how you got to be the Black Tech Guy.
Yeah.
But what got you there? I mean, what was this family about that got you into inspiration of being so techie and nerdy and all that stuff?
Yeah. I think it's, the interesting thing about that is I grew up in a middle class household, right? I definitely would say we didn't have the struggle where so many Black families talk about going through the struggle. Like, I lived in a privileged environment. And so being part of that privileged environment, like when it came to cool tech stuff, like we always had it. Every game system or whatever, it was just always in the house. I remember for Christmas one year, like I got a replica Star Trek phone, like whatever the ship is for Star Trek. It's like, it was and you take it off and like that's what you talk with. And it wasn't that functional, right? It was just like, I don't want to hold this big thing to my ear, but it was like, that was a type of environment we grew up in where it's always some cool tech, something to play with. And I think that just transcended later on in life. Like, hey, let's do and create some cool things in tech as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about education, and well, ultimately you'll explain what you're doing now, but like what type of educational background do you have that you want to share?
And I jumped around a ton. So when I graduated from high school, I was a kid that I'm gonna play professional sports. Like, that was my journey. I tell that to everybody, and like I believed it 150%. And I was privileged again to have a family that was like, okay, if that's what you want to do, you better work harder than everybody else. So I had this level of belief, like I believed I can do it. And so, after graduating from high school, I went to University of Tennessee, I went to Florida A&M, HBCU, that changed my life. And I went to Augsburg, I went to Anoka Ramsey, I was just all over the place. But through all that, it was just a bunch of different experiences of like, education is quite dynamic. And so I was exposed to a lot of different environments, but tech really wasn't part of that journey. So like, tech didn't enter my life as like a career or an option until January 7th, 2010.
Well, continue with that. So what happened on January 7th, 2010?
January 7th, 2010 was definitely the transformative moment where at the time I was an educator for St. Paul Public Schools, and it was like, oh, this is a solid job, it's cool, but I knew I wasn't gonna be there for the rest of my life. And so I was flicking through channels, it was like 7, 8 at night, and I came across this show called Planet of the Apps, and it was on CNBC, I believe. I can't remember, CNBC or MSNBC, one of the two, but I've never watched anything on that channel before or after that day, right? It's just not for me. But it was a special created by Apple that was saying, hey, we're about to open up the door for outside developers to build apps for iPhones. It's gonna be the next big thing. Learn how to build apps. And literally it was that 1 hour segment where I was like, oh, I want to do that. And so from that day forward, I just started. That's what it was, just start.
So tell me, what type of business do you have from an app perspective? Or you came out with some pretty creative app not too long ago.
I think that, so my strength is, oh man, Mr. Wolf, you got a cool idea. Let me see if I can wrap tech around it. Or hey, brother, or cousin, or whoever, that's a cool idea. We can wrap tech around it and scale it. And so being an educator for 7 years, there was a lot of different, I don't know, room for growth, right? To be positive in education, especially for people that look like you and I. And so it was like, oh, there's not any books in the classroom that look like us. There's not any music that's infused into the classroom that looks like us. There's so many different variables where it's like, hey, tech could play a role, tech could play a role, tech could play a role. So my strength was like, let me build these platforms in education to disrupt things and, you know, leverage our creativity or our creative genius as people of color.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What other areas of technology do you think are going to be on the horizon?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, we all talk about, you know, AI and all this stuff. One thing that was cool to me, so I office out of the Glenn Nelson Center and Lunar Startups floor, and there's some cool things happening with, what is it? Dang, now I forgot the word.
Well, you said the Lunar Startup Center?
Yeah, it's
like
Lunar Startup
virtual
Center.
reality?
Yeah, it's not virtual reality. It's augmented audio. Sorry.
Oh, augmented audio.
Augmented audio.
The
So
audio piece of that. Okay.
right. So Glenn Nelson Center is filled with a bunch of cool, creative people that are partnering with NPR, and so it's like, how can NPR partner with some cool people to disrupt audio, right? Because clearly that's their industry. And so like one of the companies in there talks about, hey, you can put in these headphones, walk down, let's say Rondo, right? And all of a sudden it's like ding, and then you get this augmented audio of a story about that block based on your location. Or so you think about that, scale it to any museum, scale it to any community, and it's like, that's dope, because there's so many stories out there, right, where it's like audio would be just amazing. So I was like, man, I wish I came up with that idea, because when you think about traveling, it's like you no longer then need a guide. You can open up this app and say, there's 17 guides. I like this black guy right here. I'm gonna follow his journey and then just go for it. So anyways, I think that augmented audio is gonna be extremely powerful, and I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to it. And so,
Well, especially in light of the bandwidth requirements are much less than video, and I know everybody's talking about 5G and whenever that's going to show up. So the reality of it is NPR is very forward thinking in terms of trying to understand how they can, you know, implement that, as well as think of all the other applications.
Right,
for it.
right.
So travel, everything. So
amazing.
it is pretty amazing. So we've talked a little bit about education. We've talked a little bit about career. And so any other things, any other thoughts that you have for like a young person about their career, what passion they should pursue, or education on how you got there? What would you advise a young person today?
So I read 2 books recently that were very transformative. So the first book that ever really, really transformed my life to my core was 4 Agreements, and it just helped me like center as a person. And so outside of that book, I've read some dope things, but in the last month and a half, I read The Alchemist and Manifest Now.
Really?
And so I had read The Alchemist before some years back, but it didn't really resonate with me at the time. And so when I read it again, it was just about like going outside your comfort zone and like finding your personal legend, whatever that is. And so I feel like a lot of us are navigating life in this environment that's comfortable to us. And it's like, well, step outside of it. And once you step outside of it and you see this new world, you're gonna learn a lot of cool stuff. And the cool things that you learn is the joy, right? It's the journey is a joy, and it took me a while to understand, like, it's not the end destination. It's like, I'm on this journey as a black tech guy trying to do cool stuff. And it's like, yeah, I know I want to get here, but Mondo, you need to start appreciating what's happening right now. And that's what Manifest Now and The Alchemist did for me. It was like, focus on right now. And I get to come and be on shows like this with you, right? I get to work with young people. I get to build creative apps. And so I've been more present in like what's happening right now and all the blessings that I have. So I guess my feedback or whatever to some young people is like, hey, what's happening right now? What do you love about it? and can you multiply that? Can you do it over and over and over, that thing that you care about? Or do you want to step outside your comfort zone and do something completely different? And then if you do, just enjoy the journey, because the journey is where it's at.
Yeah, don't be afraid and just enjoy the journey. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So our last and parting thought. So now we've heard about this incredible experience that you have and all these wonderful things that you're doing. Is there any one thing or anything you want to share, like your things that you truly love to do when you put everything else on the shelf? Do you have any personal passions outside of this, or is this your passion?
That's a great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that, I talked about having the privilege of being in a middle-class family, and with that is like having an awesome father. And so I felt like I had the blueprint of how to be a great dad. And so, like, aside from business, it's like I'm a father to my daughter, and she definitely runs the world, you know. Before we came, where this morning she's like, all right, Dad, I need $20. Can you drop it off? I need to go out to the mall. I got my nails done and all, and, you know, just all this cool stuff. But it's, all right, you are being a consumer. I'll give. We got enough money where I can give, and you can go buy $20 things. But how do I then coach you early to say, all right, become a producer? Right, produce content, produce material, produce something. And so right now, outside of me building myself, I'm trying to build her, YouTube, something, right? Like, just see yourself as an asset instead of just a consumer. So that's definitely a passion.
Good, good. Well, thank you so much for this interview. I appreciate the time that you've taken away being an entrepreneur and businessman. And we look forward to many, many more ventures and watching you along your journey. So
Appreciate
thank you
it.
for joining this episode of Altitude.
Thank you.
All right, sir. This was an amazing show. We're so glad that you stayed through the entire episode. Hopefully you will find information that is valuable as you choose education in the future, as you choose options for careers, and maybe think a little bit about what kind of lifestyle that you want to live after you choose a career in STEAM. Science, technology, engineering, arts, and the math are all about you, and you can absolutely do this. So stay tuned to our next episode of Altitude.